You're listening to The Bird Bath. This episode of The Bird Bath is brought to you by the Bird Bath Terminal with our new API and MCP. If you're in vet med, M&A, or recruiting, or you sell into practices, you've got the spreadsheet. Somebody built it, somebody's supposed to be updating it, but you know what? Nobody is. The terminal is just that, but live. Every practice in the US, ownership down to the group, corporate versus local versus independent, doctor rosters, revenue estimates, acquisitions, openings, and closings as they happen. And you now don't have to come to us to use all this data. The API puts it inside of whatever you've already built. Sync ownership into your CRM so your reps see who's behind the corporate groups before they dial. Feed practice counts and revenue estimates into your model instead of retyping them. Hit it nightly and your pipeline updates itself. MCP is the same data with a different door. Point Claude at the terminal and just ask, which groups bought in Texas last quarter? Give me every 3-doctor practice in Nashville. It queries the live database and answers. No export, no reformatting, no analyst in the middle. Your team already knows what to ask. Give them the answers with the Bird Bath Terminal. Go to thebirdbath.io/terminal or click the link in the show notes for more information. Welcome back to the Bird Bath. Each week we scrape the surface of the news you need to know, so let's get into it. Top story this week, there are quite a few actually, but I think the one that a lot of people were reading different things about is Farmer's Dog acquiring Woof. Obviously, there was a funny LinkedIn post I saw from a guy from Woofles saying, hey, we weren't the ones acquired. It was Woof, W-O-O-F. And Woof and Farmer's Dog are partnering up here. It's a undisclosed amount acquisition here. The intention is for it to close this year. Bank of America as well as JP Morgan have committed into some of the financing. So the numbers are expected to be rather large. And the big company, Farmer's Dog, is keeping Woof as their own independent and standalone division within the business. Woof was founded in 2019. They make a ton of sort of enrichment tools for ways to get your dog's excited about what they're eating. So they have the Pupsicle tray, they've got a bite brush, a chew, a bully safe starter kit, and a ton of different things. Really think of some of the stuff that we've seen from companies like Kong over the years, and now think about that as what Woof is bringing to the market or continues to bring to the market and is now bringing into that Farmer's Dog portfolio. This is not something super new, right? The idea here is that we're seeing brands finding, it used to be, right, the whole mind share or the whole plate or the whole bowl in this situation, but now Farmer's Dog is outside of the bowl with Woof. And as people are cutting down on visits to the vet, they are looking for ways to keep their pets healthier through nutrition and supplements and stimulating feeding methodologies and those sort of things. So this is one that should not be a big surprise to anyone, but congratulations to the two companies on their new unity and unification and partnership going forward. A company that's been getting beat up the past couple weeks here in the past couple months or few months just put out their numbers, and that's Zoetis put out their Q2 numbers. Their revenue reported as flat overall, with their organic growth of the business down 1%. So things were down, and the really hard thing for them was that their derm products were down 16%. So they've been seeing a lot of revenue growth going down. Adjusted net income was down. And this means that they're going to be making some shakeups and some moves and ways to try and restructure the way the business is working. So last week, they also decided, hey, let's unify some of the manufacturing and finance decision making within the business. And they named Jay Saccaro as the executive vice president, CFO, and COO. And he came from outside the ecosystem here. So he's not someone that was promoted within Zoetis, but he is coming outside. He was at GE Healthcare and Baxter before that. And the previous CFO, Wetteny Joseph, is now moving over to an advisory role. So they talked quite a bit about that and how that would continue to operate within the organization, and how Wetteny is going to continue to participate in the business. But the crazy thing is, when you looked at everyone else that reported their numbers, Elanco and IDEXX numbers went the other way. Elanco was up 10% over their fiscal year guidance, and IDEXX was up 10%, and they did an 18% increase on their fiscal year guidance. So they're seeing a lot of growth. Their InView diagnostics passed 9,000 instruments in market. So it's kind of this tough spot, and I think the hard thing here is that IDEXX is obviously not banking on that pharmaceutical revenue to drive the business, and Elanco is seeing growth from some of the medications and the acquisitions that they've made that are continue to drive growth, while Zoetis is seeing a tough spot as they're sort of tackling both the diagnostic business as well as the growth of their difficulties within the pharmaceutical business. So tough time to be in the Zoetis world, but we'll hope that maybe this bringing together of the financial mind and the COO manufacturing brain powers are going to be seeing some changes and some positive trajectory for where the business is going. Another company that's been doing a ton of movement and restructuring of their business for what we all think has to be the IPO coming up, right, is some big moves and adjustments to where people are in the organization. Leslie Storms, who we talked about in December of last year, who joined from the J&J world into joining the JAB portfolio of businesses as the president of Ethos, has now been promoted to the COO role over NVA. So NVA Ethos had to sort of break apart. They're merged. They're coming back together in a much more realistic way now. And another person that's seeing this is Dr. Stacy Burdick. Dr. Burdick has now been named NVA's chief medical officer across all of their hospital types. So she previously was the chief medical officer of Ethos, and now they're unifying sort of that medical vision and direction across all of the NVA portfolio businesses. So, it's beating that constant drum that I keep talking about, but it's definitely one that is aligning more and more to how NVA wants to structure their business as they prepare for that IPO. They're also kind of making an interesting piece here of saying, hey, the medical-minded, specialty ER ethos world is where we're placing our confidence and our trust in the medical soundness of where we're guiding NVA. So pretty cool thing to see there. They're really pushing the narrative and the conversation around where the business goes medically and operationally moving forward. So Leslie, Stacy, congratulations on the new transitioning promotion type roles and all of the great things that come along with that. Mission Pet Health put out a statement last week talking about the mid-level practitioner and the veterinary professional associates position. This was one that I did not expect to hear from a large group stating where they were on this, unless it was in the affirmative. There was definitely a lot of Mars backing through some donations as this bill in Colorado was first introduced and grown. But the team at Mission put out a statement saying that they have some concerns. They said, while the intent to address workforce challenges is acknowledged, we believe the VPA initiative undermines the standards of care the veterinary profession is built upon and does not address the workforce challenges facing the veterinary profession, which are already being addressed by other initiatives and changing demand profile. Some of their continuous claims or concerns were similar things that we've heard from organizations like the AVMA about how much education is going into this, what type of complexity and what type of hands-on teaching is happening versus what is going to be affecting the DVM licenses and how rigorous the curriculum is to become a full-fledged veterinarian versus what these VPA roles are going to be bringing. Mission was obviously not blind to the difficulty around access to care. So they said access to veterinary care is a genuine issue in rural and low-income communities. However, the VPA role is unlikely to help address this issue for several reasons, including other projects and actions being undertaken to address workforce pressures. They highlight the idea of one of the big difficulties here is that the roles that are difficult to staff veterinarians in is also going to be a difficult place for VPAs to go and work. And there's a lot of evidence in Mission's belief here that we will have sufficient graduates from the colleges. Now, the numbers that were projected from the last that I've looked at don't seem to come behind that, but we are seeing a decrease in visits. And so perhaps updated and worked numbers there could see something different happening. So it's a continued proposal. It's a continued conversation that's happening. Mission didn't go without saying that they have some ideas and thoughts. Their intention is to continue to increase the utilization of credentialed veterinary technicians, working alongside veterinary technician specialist programs, and really trying to figure out how people in the industry already can work at the top of their license. So it's an interesting piece to read from Mission Pet Health. It's not one that I expected to see from them, but it's definitely something that's keeping the conversation alive. Finally, we're going all the way over to Japan for our last story here, because we don't live in a vacuum. Is that a real thing to say? I don't know. We don't live in in isolation. The veterinary profession is not, in many ways, completely unique to what's happening in the US. So a company out in Japan, Zpeer, which is the operator of VetPeer, it's called Japan's largest online community for veterinary professionals. They say that they reach 80% of the country's small animal veterinarians, released the results of a survey that was talking about the difficulty of workload. And I thought this was particularly interesting coming from the Japanese market because of so many different ideas around how people work in Japanese culture and how that aligns to the demands of excessive work in some situations in the US communities. But the idea here and what they got from this review and from what they got from the conversations were that they found that workload pressures rise as the clinic gets larger. 36% of all respondents describe themselves as busy, and only 6% of solar practitioners said that their pace is unstable. So the larger that your practice gets, the more veterinarians you have. They said it. At hospitals with 4 or more veterinarians, they saw a continuous increase in what people felt as the workload pressure within those clinics. Veterinarians across the Japanese landscape wanted to grow preventative care. They said it was the space that they wanted to see people doing the most. They felt that the expansion of wellness exams was the most important thing that they could do as veterinarians to improve the quality of life for pets. And they also, this one was pretty cool, wanted to see less boarding offered in the clinics. 33% said that they wanted to scale it back, and that it's a non-medical work with a heavy staff burden. So very interesting. I think we've seen a lot of the boarding shift out of the US veterinary clinics already, but this is one that we're hearing from the Japanese market and a lot of the things that matter to them. So interesting to hear, interesting to see that we are not alone in the US market with some of the workforce struggles or demands or feelings that a lot of veterinarians are voicing, and that that's happening all the way on the other side of the world. So very cool stuff to check out. Be sure to check out more about what's going on across the world. I think it's a really great and important gauge of how things are happening for us and what we should be able to think about, learnings, things to avoid, things to improve on, and even more. And for more on these and other stories, join us by subscribing to our Substack. There's a link in the bio, and don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing and rating the show. For the Bird Bath, I'm Ryan Leach. See you next week.